incident that, interestingly, Luke is the only one that records this message, this story. None of the other gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, or John, have it. It's only here. And it's a good story. There's three people that are involved in it. There might be other people we don't know. There had to have been other people there. But there's only three characters or three people that are in it. So let's read through it. In Luke chapter 7 and verse 36. When one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at a table. A woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, so she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. As she stood behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. When the Pharisees who had invited him saw this, or when the Pharisee who had seen him invited him said this, he said this to himself: if this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she's a sinner. Jesus answered him, Simon, I have something I want to tell you. Tell me, teacher, he said. Two people owed money to a certain moneylender. One owed him 500 denarii and the other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back, so he forgave the debts of both. Now, which one will love him more? Simon replied, I suppose the one who had the bigger debt forgiven. You have judged correctly, he said. Then he turned toward the woman and said to Simon, do you see this woman? I came into your house and you did not give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman from the time I entered has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. Therefore I tell her, her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown, but whoever has been forgiven little loves little. And then Jesus said to her, your sins are forgiven. The other guests began to say amongst themselves, who is this who even forgives sins? And Jesus said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Let's go back to verse 36. Let's go through this and see if there's some things that we can learn from it about Jesus. It says, when a Pharisee invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. You know, it's very interesting. Luke doesn't say, there was this guy named Simon that invited Jesus to come over to his place for dinner. He uses a very specific term, and he uses the term Pharisee. Now, the Pharisees, they were the religious people of the day, and they were the guys that made sure, they were the religious police, for lack of a better term. And they made sure that if you're part of the synagogue, part of the congregation, you're adhering to all the rules and the regulations that Moses had given them. And they were notorious. They were just like, you got to do this, and you got to do that, and you got to do this. And if you don't do this, then you, and if you don't measure up, then we're not going to let you into the group, and so on and so on. And they're just mean. If you want to put it in secular terms, it's kind of the same way as if we were to introduce someone and we said, this is our local MPP. And it's like, oh, he's a politician. And as soon as we hear the word politician, that somebody holds an office, it's just like, oh, there's a negative connotation because, well, how has he scammed us? How has he cheated? What has he done? What's his agenda? And we can go all kinds of different places. That's kind of what the people thought when they would hear the term Pharisee. It wasn't in term of an endearment. And these guys, these Pharisees, had gotten to the point that they were very much against Jesus. Just go back a few pages over to Luke chapter 6. Jesus invited a sinner, a guy named Levite, who was a tax collector, and he invites him into his home, and the Pharisees were like, Do you know whose house you're going to? This is a tax collector. You know what he does for a living? He rips people off all the time. Well, this Levi guy in verse 29 of chapter 6, he held this great banquet for Jesus at his house, and a large crowd of tax collectors and others were eating with them. But the Pharisees, the guys that made sure that you were following all the rules properly, and the teachers of the law who belonged in their sect, complained to the disciples, "Why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners? Why are you hanging out with all the riffraff? Why are you hanging out with the prostitutes? Why are you hanging out with the drug dealers? Why are you hanging out with those that don't go to church?" Jesus answered them, "It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I didn't come to call the righteous, but sinners under repentance." You know, they had decided that they were going to figure out how they could catch Jesus, how they could make sure that he wasn't doing or by what authority he was doing these things, and they were questioning him at every time, and they didn't like what he was doing. And so the Pharisees, they were not really big on Jesus. And so when this Pharisee, if you go back to chapter 7 about Simon here, if this Pharisee invited Jesus, I wonder what his intention was. We don't read it here. We don't know. Maybe he just wanted to be able to see this Jesus who is doing these great things, performing miracles and forgiving sins in people's, which he wasn't supposed to be doing, because who was he after all? He couldn't be the Messiah. But here, we don't know what Simon's intent was. Maybe he was trying to figure out some information about Jesus to take back to the Pharisees so that they could accuse him of something. That's more like a more logical thought, that he was trying to get some evidence. Okay, I'm going to invite Jesus in my home, and under those pretenses, he's going to get relaxed, and he's going to start telling me what his agenda is, and then I can take that back to the Pharisees, and I'm going to tell them what he's doing, and then therefore we can accuse him and get rid of this scoundrel that's spreading this new religion, this new faith, this new idea of how to have a relationship with God. We don't know. So we have this guy, this Pharisee, and if you want to put some labels on him, you could say he's prideful and he's self-righteous. Now, I know that there's nobody in here that has those same acronyms, but I think some of the time we can get into being Pharisaical ourselves. And we can have the same mindset that, well, I figured it all out, and I know what all the rules are, and, should we let these people in the church, and we have this judgmental attitude, which we're going to see is not like Jesus in any way whatsoever. And then it says in verse 37, a woman, don't know her name, don't know anything about her except one thing that we know about her: she was a sinner. Now, we don't know for sure, but history says, and most people think, that the sin that she was involved in was prostitution. She was a prostitute. She was a woman of the night. So not only was she sinning, but she was causing other people to sin. She was an advocate for sin. And so here, this lady comes in. Jesus has been invited to this meal, and then all of a sudden this lady walks in. Now, I dare say she didn't have an invitation card. She wasn't like, oh, okay, Jesus, just so you know, there's going to be a sinner coming and she's going to be reclining at the table as well. No, she came in unannounced. She comes in, and they're reclining at the table. That was a regular way for them to eat. They didn't have tables and chairs like we do. They were way more refined. But their meal was around a table. And you may see this in if you go over to Turkey or other Eastern countries where you lay down and you've got a table and you dip into a bowl, and I've never been a part of that. That'd be kind of cool to try that. But that whole idea of just reclining and eating, spending time together. But while this meal is going on, this woman walks in. And she stands behind Jesus. His feet would have been reclined behind him, and he's got his elbows and his hands in around where the meals are, and his feet are there. And she comes up to him, and she starts weeping and crying. And she uses her tears to wipe Jesus' feet. And then she does something which is totally undignified for a woman during that time. She lets her hair down. It was very disgraceful for a woman to walk out publicly with their hair down. Only your husband could see you with your hair down. And she lets her hair down, and she gets down, and she uses her hair. She doesn't ask for a towel. She doesn't ask for a washcloth. She doesn't look for a napkin or anything. She uses her hair to wipe Jesus' feet clean. And then, when she's finished that ordeal, she came with something that was of great value. It says that she had a jar of alabaster, a perfume around her neck. And she took that and she opened it up. And then she anointed it with fine smelling salts. And this wasn't, Dollarama perfume. This was, like Tiffany's perfume, Saks and Fifth's perfume. This was high-class perfume that was made by the perfumers of the day, and it was highly, highly regarded. It was worth a lot of money. And this lady sacrifices this perfume, this ointment, this oil, and gives it and applies it to Jesus. Well, we go back to the Pharisee here, but what he's just seen but doesn't get it is a woman who has just shown some great humility. She's shown some great love. And she's also shown some great devotion. So we've got one guy that he's self-righteous, he's prideful, and then we've got a woman full of humility, love, and devotion. Two totally different people in the same room. Well, he sees this happening. And he doesn't say this out loud. He says to himself, if this man really was a prophet, so obviously he's showing the extent of what he believes about who Jesus is. He doesn't say, knowing that Jesus was a prophet, he would definitely know. He's still questioning, is Jesus a prophet or not? Is he the Messiah as he's claiming to be? And he's saying to himself, if he really knew who this woman was, that she's a sinner, why would he spend time with her? Why would he allow her to come in and do this? Number one, it's a woman. You're not supposed to let a woman come in and do something like that to you. He was breaking down barriers left, right, and center. And he was allowing a sinful woman, a woman of the night, to come in and administer an anointing. But Jesus, and we read this in John chapter 2 a few weeks ago, that he always knew what was in people's hearts and minds. And he knew what was in Simon's. He says, Simon, I want to tell you something. I wonder what Simon was thinking. Oh, what are you going to tell me? This should be good. It's like, are you going to explain to me why you're allowing this lady to do this? Are you going to sit down and tell me what, is this right or wrong, and so on and so forth? Where are you? So he shares his story, and he talks about two different people. One guy that owed 500 denarii. One denarii was like worth a day's wages. So we're talking one guy that owned or owed his lender a year and a half worth of wages, a year and a half worth of money. That's a lot of money. And then it says the other one was 50 denarii. So not near as much. It's like a tenth. And he says, Simon, well, what do you think? I'm going to ask you a question. Jesus did that a lot. He didn't answer a question as much as he asked questions back to get you thinking. And he's saying to Simon, who's asked this question in his head, does he really know who this woman is? That she's a sinner? And he says, who would be forgiven more if the debtor said, you know what? I'm canceling your debts. You with the 500, it's gone. Don't worry about it. You with the 50, no problem. It's gone. Who's going to feel more forgiven? He said, well, I suppose it would be the one who was forgiven the 500. Good answer, Simon. You got something right. Good answer. You're right. And then he turns to the lady and he says, your sins are forgiven. Jesus didn't sit down with the lady and first say, okay, so you're a sinner, so let's talk about your sin here, and let's see what you've been all involved in, and we need to talk about, we need to get a plan for you to change your life, and we got to see if you're willing to change all these things, and then we'll accept you into the group, and so on. No. He saw from what she did that she was repentant, that she wanted to change. She had obviously heard about Jesus. Maybe she had seen a friend miraculously cured. Maybe she saw someone raised from the dead. Maybe she was part of a meal that was just a small meal and it turned into something really big. But she had heard of who Jesus was and she wanted to see him. And when she came to Jesus and was confronted with Jesus, she was convicted of her sin. Because when you put the two together, you have this one sinful woman confronted with somebody that had no sin. Just imagine what that would be like, to come up and spend time with somebody that had never sinned before. Just if you're wondering, that will never happen because we all sin. But here this lady is confronted with a man that was perfect. And he had the authority and he had the justification to say, you know what, the life that you've been living, lady, it's not right. Go change your life, and when you've changed it, come back and then we'll talk, and then I'll take your sacrifice. No. He forgave her that day, on the spot. Well, the other Pharisees, they had a hard time with this. Like, well, for you to be able to forgive sin, like, what authority do you get this from? He doesn't even answer their question. He just talks to the lady and says, I want you to go in peace because your faith today has saved you. Her belief, her faith saved her that day because she put it into action. Now, I wonder, it would have been interesting to be at that meal. I don't know how she got in. Like how did she get past the servants? How did, and she gets into this meal, but normally when we go to somebody's house and we're invited to somebody's house, there's certain things that are protocol. You expect them to meet you at the door. But if they, I'm in the kitchen right now, just come on in, make yourself at home. You start to make yourself at home, and no, don't go in there. But make yourself at home. And if you need the washroom, there's a powder room right there in the front door, and then come out to the patio and there's drinks there and you can serve yourself. I'm just getting busy right now. I'm getting all the things taken care of. That was basically what Simon was like. Because he didn't take care of the things that Jesus needed. He said, I came. You didn't wash my feet. You're too busy making sure that you've got all the rules and regulations taken care of in your nice little religious packet there that you've got, being a Pharisee, but you forgot to be hospitable to me and even wash my feet. I walked through dust to get here. You didn't anoint me. You didn't greet me with a kiss. Look at what this lady did. See, some of the time I think when we want to have a following of Jesus, it's about a whole bunch of religious requirements that we got to do. It's not about that in any way whatsoever. It's about us having a personal, vulnerable relationship with Jesus. Jesus already knew that she was a sinner. He could read what was in her heart. He knew what she had been like. But Jesus accepted her. So we're spending all this time wanting to understand Jesus and what he's like and how we can more emulate him in our life. And why do we do this? Why did this lady do it? Well, first of all, the most important thing that she was seeking that day was forgiveness. Isn't that what we need when we go to Jesus? Or have we forgotten that? See, the sinner, the woman that came to Jesus, really represents every single one of us. We're all sinners. And some of us were like, well, you don't know all the garbage. Use other words. We don't know all the garbage that I've had in my life. How can Jesus really accept me? Will he accept me? Because the church won't accept me. Because of the religious things that I need and the hoops that I need to jump through. See, the reason we go back to Jesus is to understand what true forgiveness is all about. That he was willing to accept us, not where he thought we needed to be in a couple of weeks after we went through studies, where we went through understanding who Jesus was, but to be accepted where we're at. See, I think some of the time we think that in order to be a follower of Jesus, that means that we have to get everything right. Give it up. Give it up. You'll never get it all right. And even when you become a follower, when you become a Christian, you know what? You're still going to mess up. And that's why we need the mercy and grace that Jesus provides. He says, I'm not going to leave you alone. I'm not going to just say, okay, well, you got to change everything, and then I hope you do well. He gives us the Spirit to be able to reside on us and help us, and comfort us, and guide us, and control us, if we're willing to have that. But it doesn't mean that we're going to be perfect. If people look at Christians and expect us to be perfect, sorry, we're not. We're just forgiven. We have mercy and we have grace. And really, what our whole goal should be in order to understand who Jesus is, the forgiveness that he wants to give us with where we're at right now. And it doesn't matter about your past. It doesn't matter about all the garbage. It doesn't matter. He can take it. When he went to the cross, he didn't say, okay, well, these are the sins that I'm going to take care of, but these ones, no, sorry, that's too big for me. He died for all of them. And what we like to do is categorize. So really, our purpose in getting to know Jesus better is to understand how he forgave us, but also how he forgave others, and see that. I bet you this was a huge eye-opener for Simon. So if he's able to forgive her, and I wonder if he drew the correlation that she's the 500 and that he's the 50, or is it the other way around? We can categorize all. But here he saw this forgiveness given to this woman, this sinner, who shouldn't have been in his house, who wasn't invited, who barged in and gets at Jesus' feet and takes care of a need that he has. And she walks out with two things: forgiveness and peace. How many of us want peace in our life? How many of us need forgiveness in our life? Every single one of us. But it's not just going to Jesus to understand that he's a forgiving God, that he's a forgiving person, that he'll accept us where we're at with all of our garbage, with all of our junk. He just wants us to come and go to his feet. But he also wants us to leave imitating him. See, we can learn all these things about Jesus, but if we don't, and as I said at the beginning, if we don't internalize who Jesus is in our life, then what's the use in having a relationship with him? Jesus, I want you to come over to my place for dinner. I want to invite you into my life. Make yourself at home. But don't go in there. Don't go in that room. I want to invite you into my home, but I'm busy doing some other things right now, so just go find your place at the table. I want you in my life, but I'm really busy. I can tell you where I need you to fit into my life. No. Having Jesus in your life is having him all in our life. And that should really be the goal of what we're doing here, of getting to see how Jesus dealt with people on a one-on-one basis. He didn't deal like the Pharisees and the Sadducees did in any way whatsoever. He didn't treat them the way we want to or would think they should. And it's no different today in the churches. It was interesting. We were talking yesterday in the Bible study group that I'm a part of with the guys, and we were talking about, how can we have an impact in a world where without having apathy? How can we change our apathy of not caring anymore about the people in the world? And, I know what he's going to do with that $5 when I give it to him, or I know what that person's going to do with this. And, I've talked to, how can we change from apathy to empathy? To really caring for people the same way that Jesus cared for people. That's what it comes down to. So in these times when we get together on Sunday morning and we look at the life of Jesus, maybe with a microscope a little bit closer, it's not just, oh, okay, yeah, I remember that lady. Okay, yeah, she did this. Oh, that's a neat story about, the guy forgiving and, the 550. That's not the things that we need to remember. We need to remember Jesus' forgiveness, unconditional forgiveness. And also that we're supposed to walk away with peace because we've given our lives over to him. That's the only time we're going to get peace. We try to do it on our own all the time. And, life is somewhat like a hamster wheel. We keep running and running and running, and we get the same thing happening over and over. And it's like, when's it going to end? When am I going to get some peace? The only time that we're going to get peace is when we jump off and give it to Jesus. That's it. Does that mean, as I said earlier, that, once you do that, I've got it all figured out? No, it's a journey. And that's why we do it together. That's why we encourage each other. That's why we continue to read. That's why we come and worship together. Not because it's the right thing, religious thing to do. It's because it's a relationship with Jesus and with each other. So what do you walk away with? I don't want to stand at the back. Oh, nice sermon, Rob. Thank you. Oh, great. Walk away with something that will change you. Internalize it. Be thankful for the forgiveness that is available to us. And imitate Jesus in our lives for those that have accepted that forgiveness. Because the forgiveness that we have should propel us to do things for him, of being humble with him, of loving him, and showing him how much we adore him. It means us going to Jesus' feet and giving our best, our alabaster. It means us becoming to him broken and crying, not relying on everyone else to take care of where's the towel, but giving ourselves and ourselves only. And that's when Jesus turns around and says, you're forgiven. Go in peace.